3,000 years. Think about that for a moment, my friend. 3 millennia have passed, dozens and dozens of generations have been born and died, empires have risen and fallen, and yet a phrase written long ago on parchment with simple ink has just been fulfilled in the most contested city on earth, Jerusalem. Not in a vague way, not in a symbolic way that requires theological juggling. It was literal, specific, breathtaking. I'm going to tell you something that will send shivers down your spine. What happened in Jerusalem makes many people tremble, because if this prophecy was fulfilled with such precision, then the entire Bible gains even greater weight. It's not just an old book. It's the living voice of God crossing the centuries to reach you today, can you imagine? A phrase written when there was no electricity, internet, or airplanes, being fulfilled in a time of cameras, cell phones, and live streaming. Do you know what's most impressive? Almost no one is talking about it. The big news outlets are silent. Many people try to sweep this fact under the rug. Because if you admit that a 3,000-year-old prophecy has been fulfilled before your eyes, you have to admit that God is in control of history. And that affects everything. It affects your life, your choices, the way you look at the future. But there's something you need to understand. We're not talking about rumors, about stories circulating on social media. We're talking about a real event, in a real place with real people, recorded by cameras, reported by people from various nations. And this event aligns with very old verses that have been in the Bible all along, but which now shine brighter than ever. Do you realize how extraordinary this is? In the city of Jerusalem, near the Western Wall, known as the Wailing Wall, something truly extraordinary happened. People from dozens of different countries began to gather there. It wasn't a large, pre-arranged conference. It wasn't a gigantic tourist event. It was ordinary people from different places being pulled to the same spot at the same time without quite understanding why. It already starts off strange, doesn't it? Jews, Christians, Muslims, people without religion, people from Asia, Africa, Europe, the Americas. Languages mixed in the air. Hebrew, Arabic, English, French, Chinese, Spanish, Russian. A confusing sound, typical of a crowded tourist spot. But suddenly what was confusion turned into something no one expected. People began to understand each other. Now comes something that will leave you speechless. People who only spoke Hebrew started to understand those who spoke Arabic. People who only knew English started to understand Russian. People who had never studied a foreign language began to understand entire sentences. Without headphones, without a translator, without an app. It was as if the old barriers had fallen for a few minutes. The conversations were clear. Questions, answers, prayers, pleas for peace, shouts of praise. Witnesses said it was as if the words leaped from one person's mouth straight to the other's heart. It didn't require study. It didn't require effort. It was pure understanding. And after a while, everything went back to normal. Everyone went back to speaking their own language, and the barrier reappeared. But those who lived through that moment were forever marked. Let me tell you something that challenges our understanding of the Bible. When we hear this story, many immediately recall another event, the Tower of Babel in Genesis chapter 11. At that time, humanity had only one language. They used this unity to challenge God. In response, God confused their languages and scattered the peoples. From then on, language became a barrier, distance, division. Now look at the contrast. In Jerusalem, in a place of prayer, not rebellion, languages were, for a moment, aligned again. Where there was division before, there was unity. People didn't use this experience to challenge God, but to cry out, weep, worship, and ask for mercy. It's as if the Lord were giving a small sign. I can undo what I did at Babel when the time is right. Do you realize how powerful that is? And you know what's even more incredible? The Bible already spoke of a time when God would change the way people speak. The prophet Zephaniah wrote something very strange for his time. In Zephaniah chapter 3 verse 9 it is written, "At that time I will change the way the people speak, so that everyone will call on the name of the Lord and serve him with one accord." Do you see the connection? Transformed speech. People calling on the name of the Lord. Unity in worship. Scholars have debated for centuries what this changed speech might be. Was it a single language? Was it just a figure of speech? Was it some kind of symbol? And suddenly, in the heart of Jerusalem, you see people of many languages understanding each other, calling upon God, praying side by side, serving in one spirit, in one cry. This is not a coincidence. The Bible is very clear about this. These are not speculations or empty theories. Now, I want to speak directly to you, brother. If all of this is touching your heart, if you feel that God is moving you through this story, do something simple but very important. Write this specific phrase in the comments. I believe that the prophecies are being fulfilled today. Write with faith. Write it as a declaration, because this phrase is your response to everything that God is showing you in our time. When you declare this, you're not just typing words on a screen. You're taking a stand. You're saying to heaven and hell, I'm not sleeping, I'm seeing the signs, I believe God is at work in history. And from that point, we will walk together, step by step, understanding what these prophecies say, what has already been fulfilled, what is being fulfilled now, and what this means for your future, for your home and for your eternity. And when those voices fell silent and each person heard only their own language again, something lingered in the air, my friend. Go feeling that that moment wasn't just rare. It was a warning, a calling, a sign. People began to look at each other with tears in their eyes, as if they had realized they had experienced something that doesn't belong to this world. And it is precisely from this point that we continue now, because what happened there was not isolated. It connects to something much greater, something that God had been preparing since ancient times. Let me show you something extraordinary. In the book of Psalms, written by David about 3,000 years ago, there is a set of verses that many people have read for years without realizing their depth. Psalm chapter 68, verse 31 says, Princes will come from Egypt. Ethiopia will quickly stretch out her hands to God. And immediately afterwards, in verse 32, Kingdoms of the earth, sing to God, sing praises to the Lord. Do you realize that David is talking about peoples, about nations, not just one culture? He is talking about people from afar, from distant regions, coming to the God of Israel. Now comes something that will impress you. Many ancient scholars claimed that this psalm described a time when people from various places would unite, not in war, not in trade, but in worship. But no one could imagine how something so improbable could literally happen. And suddenly you see 70 nations gathered in Jerusalem, in the same place at the same time, and for a few minutes speaking as if they had one language. This is not normal. This is not random. This is prophetic precision. But there is another layer that few realize. The number 70 does not appear by chance. 70 were the nations listed in Genesis chapter 10, right after the flood. At that time, the world was divided into 70 peoples, representing all of humanity. When 70 nations appear together in Jerusalem today, it is as if God was saying, I am gathering again what was scattered. It is not just a gathering of tourists. It is an echo of ancient times. I'm going to tell you something that will give you goosebumps. In Genesis chapter 11, God confused languages because man wanted to unite in pride. Now, in Jerusalem, he allowed languages to be understood to unite hearts in worship. Where there was judgment in the past, in this brief moment there was grace. Where there was division, there was unity. Where Babel separated, Jerusalem brought together. Do you realize the power of that? And you know what's even more incredible. This all aligns with the words of the prophet Zephaniah, who lived hundreds of years after David. He said that God would change the language of the people so that everyone would call upon the name of the Lord. This seemed impossible, strange, even illogical. But the impossible happened under the sun of Jerusalem. The language, even if only for a few minutes, was changed. The cry rose, worship flowed, the prophecy shone. But now comes the part that truly touches the heart. Why would God allow such a powerful sign now? Why in this generation, our generation? Because we are living in a time when prophecies are no longer just being studied. They are being fulfilled before our very eyes. Israel has returned to the map after 2,000 years. Jerusalem is in the hands of the Jewish people again. Old promises are becoming clear. Events that once seemed distant are now knocking on the door of history. My friend, if you are listening to this, it is no coincidence. God touches whomever he wants to touch. God calls whomever he wants to call. He does nothing in vain. When he fulfills such an ancient prophecy, It is like a tap on humanity's shoulder. It is as if he were saying, "Wake up, pay attention, time is running out." Now let me ask you something in the second to last paragraph of this section, and I ask this with affection and seriousness. If this message speaks to you, if what God is doing in our time touches your heart, subscribe to the channel. Do this because more and more signs like this will appear, and you need to be firm, informed, and prepared. Subscribing isn't about numbers. It's so you don't get lost when new signs appear. Because from here, we're going to delve into even deeper layers, into connections that will leave you amazed, into biblical revelations that make everything meaningful in our time. And what begins to unfold before us is too great to ignore, too urgent to postpone, too real to treat as mere curiosity. When those 70 nations dispersed and silence returned to the wall, many stood there as if trying to comprehend what they had just experienced. Some were still crying, others trembled, others simply looked to the sky as if expecting to hear something more. And that is the point from which we continue, because what happened that day is part of something even greater that most people don't realize. I'm going to tell you something that will send shivers down your spine. It wasn't just an isolated sign, it was a pattern repeated throughout the Bible. Every time God is about to move something gigantic in history, he gives signs that touch on language, communication, and unity among peoples. This happened in Babel, it happened at Pentecost, and now it's happening again in Jerusalem. Each time with a different meaning, each time preparing for something bigger. In Babel, God divided. In Pentecost, God empowered. And now, in this time, God has enabled understanding. See how it all fits together. In Acts chapter 2, people heard the message in their own language, even though the apostles had never studied those words. In the recent event in Jerusalem, people spoke as usual, but those who listened miraculously understood. This changes everything. It shows that God can touch both the mouth and the ear. Do you know what's most impressive? Both scenes share the same essence, God uniting people so that the name of his Son may be known. At Pentecost, it was the gospel beginning to spread. Now it's the silent announcement that he is returning. The Bible is very clear about what happens when these signs begin to multiply. Jesus said it would be like leaves sprouting on a fig tree. Small at first, but quick, constant, revealing. But there's something you need to understand. In Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, John describes a scene in heaven with people from every nation, tribe, people, and language worshipping God together. Notice the detail. All the languages, but all understanding the same worship. And what happened at the wall was like a small reflection of that heavenly vision, as if God had pulled back the curtain of heaven for a few minutes and let us see a glimpse of what is to come. And do you know what this reveals? That what John saw wasn't just a beautiful image, it was real, it was literal. It was the future, but a future so near that it's already beginning to seep into our time. This is not a coincidence. These aren't theories. The details are absolutely precise, and when you compare what John saw with what dozens of people witnessed in Jerusalem, you realize how extraordinary this is. Now comes something that will impress you. When God brings signs like this, it's not to frighten, it's to prepare, it's to call, it's to align. He is telling the world that history is reaching an important turning point, that the prophetic clock is ticking faster, that the return of the Son is near, and he is using supernatural events to awaken those who are still asleep and strengthen those who are already steadfast. Let me tell you something that many ignore. Several prophecies that seemed impossible have already been fulfilled in recent years. Israel returning to existence after 2,000 years. Jerusalem returning to the hands of the Jewish people after centuries of separation. The gospel reaching practically the entire planet. Wars, conflicts, earthquakes increasing. All of this was written. All of this is happening. And now, to top it all off, an event involving the union of languages, worship, and Jerusalem, exactly as several ancient texts predicted. Now, before we move on, I want to ask you something in the second to last paragraph of this section. If this message is opening your eyes, if it's helping you see the prophecies in a new way, please click like. Not out of vanity, not for numbers, but because when you do that, the system itself starts sending this video to more people. And the more people awakened, the more hearts prepared. And this topic, my friend, is not entertainment. It's preparation for something big. Because from here on out, we're going to delve into something even more personal. We're going to touch on how all of this affects your life, your faith, your future, your choices. Because it's not just about Jerusalem. It's not just about prophecy. It's about you, about what God is saying directly to your heart during this intense time we are living through. When the day ended and the last people left the wall, the city of Jerusalem seemed to carry a different weight. It was as if the air was denser, as if something invisible had passed through, leaving a trail of reverence. Many who were present said they would never be the same again. And it is precisely here that we enter the deepest part of this message, because it is not just about a supernatural event, but about what this event means for you, for your life, and for your eternal destiny. I'm going to tell you something that touches the heart deeply. Every time God moves something great, He doesn't do it just to impress or to create beautiful stories. He does it because He is calling people. He does it because He loves. He does it because He wants to awaken those who are sleeping. He does it because He knows that time is moving forward and that many still haven't realized it. When God allows a prophecy written 3,000 years ago to shine before our eyes, it's as if He was saying, "Hey, I am near, pay attention." Do you know what's most impressive? Everything that happened that day in Jerusalem aligns with prophecies directly linked to the return of the Messiah. Jesus said the signs would be clear to those who were paying attention. And you are paying attention, my friend. The mere fact that you are here, reading this so far, already indicates that the Holy Spirit is drawing you closer. These aren't loose theories. It's not imagination. The Bible is very clear about the time we live in. But there's something you need to understand. When God begins to fulfill prophecies with such precision, He is calling you to something personal. He wants your heart. He wants your life. He wants to restore what you've lost, heal what has hurt you, cleanse what weighs you down, bring hope to what has become dark. God isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for willing people. And perhaps what happened in that holy city also happened because of you, to get your attention, to reach your soul. Now comes something that really touches you. If a prophecy written 3,000 years ago has been fulfilled so clearly, what does that mean about the other prophecies in the Bible? It means that Jesus is really coming back. It means that judgment really exists. It means that eternity is real. It means that you have a choice, and that choice is now. Not tomorrow, not later. It's now. God is calling you with love, but also with urgency. Let me tell you something straightforward, simple and true. The Bible says in Romans chapter 10 verse 9 that whoever confesses Jesus as Lord and believes that God raised Him from the dead will be saved. Saved from what? From eternal damnation. Saved from living far from God forever. Saved from carrying the weight of their mistakes alone. Saved to live a new, clean, restored life. This isn't religion. This is real life. It's your life. And you know what's even more extraordinary? The door is still open. Jesus still receives, still saves, still transforms, still heals, still lifts up, still renews, still embraces. He is calling now, and He is calling you. And what happened in Jerusalem is just another touch from Him saying, "I am coming back. Come to me while there is still time." Now, in the penultimate paragraph of this section, I want to ask for something very specific, something simple, but very important to take a step of faith. If this message spoke to your soul, if you understood that the signs are real and that God is calling you, leave this phrase in the comments, "I am ready to hear God's voice." That's all. A simple but powerful phrase, a phrase that shows your heart is open. And now, my friend, we have reached the end of this script. Not to close the subject, but to bring everything to you, to your day, to your life. The prophecy that was fulfilled was not just a sign for the world, it was a sign for you. God is saying that He is real, that He is near, that He sees you, that He calls you by name, and that He wants to prepare you for the time ahead. This is not a time for fear. It is a time of awakening, a time for decision, a time for living faith, a time to stand at the feet of Jesus, because the King is returning and He calls you to walk with Him.